Did we just watch the greatest Hall of Fame game of all time? Are running backs still underpaid despite new record deals? And who are the top 32 tight ends in football? We're answering all of those questions here on the Grey Duck NFL Show. Well, hello and welcome to the Grey Duck NFL Show. I'm your host, Josh Kolojeski, and each episode we deliver thoughtful analysis, clear-eyed discussion, and informed perspectives on the National Football League, covering the games, trends, performances, and storylines that define the season. Whether you follow every snap or simply enjoy sharp football conversation, you're in the right place. So, let's get started. Thank you for joining us here on a beautiful Friday morning post-Hall of Fame game. We'll discuss that in just a moment, but if you are a fan of the NFL, we've got our Grey Duck NFL series going on at the moment, and that is, or Grey Duck Team Preview series, I should say. That is 32 separate half-hour episodes, each one dedicated to one of the 32 franchises in the National Football League. And all of those looking ahead to what is in store for the 2026 season, what all of those teams need to happen in order to try and make a run at the postseason, and what could go wrong that would put any of those teams in jeopardy of getting a top 5 pick in the 2027 NFL Draft. Our New York Giants episode released yesterday, so that is already live. We'll have the Washington Commanders and the rest of the NFC East over the next couple of days, and that will lead you all the way up to the NFL season when it kicks off. The Seattle Seahawks and New England Patriots on a Wednesday night football opening night kickoff game in just a few weeks from now. You can follow us for those podcast. It's on our podcast feed that you're currently on. If you are listening to this on wherever you listen to podcasts, we are also on Twitter, where you can find it at Grey Duck Sports, on YouTube at Grey Duck Sports, and on TikTok at Grey.Duck.Sports if you want to find out where those team preview shows are, as well as all of our content on the Grey Duck Sports Network. Today, we're recapping one of the greatest preseason games the world has ever seen. The Carolina Panthers and Arizona Cardinals go back and forth in a Thursday night thriller to kick off the 2026 preseason. The Carolina Panthers win 33-30 on a Haynes King walk-off 6-yard rushing touchdown. The Panthers could have gone for the tie. They could have tried to kick the field goal with 2 seconds left, but they opt to go on a play from scrimmage. Haynes King can't find anyone open, and he instead uses his legs, which was his biggest calling card as a player at Georgia Tech for the last 3 years, gets into the end zone after a nice little pump fake, dives, scores the game-winning touchdown. No time left on the clock. Do you believe in miracles was the only thing missing from that broadcast, a call by Al Michaels, of course, from the 1980 Miracle United States hockey team. But Haynes King gets it done for the Carolina Panthers. A good game back and forth all night long. Right before that touchdown drive, it was Kedon Slovis leading a go-ahead touchdown drive for the Arizona Cardinals. With under 2 minutes left to go, Haynes King gets the ball back. Misses some throws, but picks up a big gain on 3rd and 15 with his legs, showing off his speed, his athleticism. I think, for me, if we're going to rank the quarterback performances that happened, there were 4 different quarterbacks that played. For Carolina, it was Kenny Pickett and Haynes King. For Arizona, it was Carson Beck and Kedon Slovis. Carson Beck, far and away, was the best quarterback on the field. And I want to put that over to the side, and we'll bring it up again in just a moment. But I would say Kenny Pickett probably number 2. Haynes King number 3. Although if we were going just as pure throwers, he would probably be all the way down at the bottom. I think his athleticism puts a little bit more on the table. And Kedon Slovis was fine. And like I said, led a go-ahead touchdown drive right before Carolina's game-winning drive. But there was a couple things missing from him when it came to getting to secondary and tertiary reads, and also the ball kind of died on him when he delivered it on a line over the middle of the field. I wasn't a huge fan of that, and he took a couple of sacks that I thought he didn't need to take. But the main takeaway from this game is that Carson Beck should be the starting quarterback at some point for the Arizona Cardinals this season. When I was scouting Carson Beck, heading into last year when he was going to start for Miami, and I was ranking the NCAA Power 4 quarterbacks for the 2025 season, Beck was near the top, especially in the ACC. Beck was probably right at the top. And the reason for that wasn't necessarily this big arm, although I think on a couple of plays he showed how big that arm can be, even post UCL surgery, which he tore his basically Tommy John ligament in his elbow during his final year over at Georgia, when they lost to Notre Dame in the college football playoffs. But Carson Beck showed that maybe his arm has recovered a little bit because he had a nice 55-yard bomb. He was accurate. That's never been a problem with Beck, his accuracy, because his mechanics are so clean and so repeatable. The main issues have been, does he have an NFL caliber arm, especially post UCL surgery, and is he able to make reads on an NFL level, or is he going to be a check down Charlie? Is he going to go underneath time and time again and never really test defenses over the top or over the middle of the field? And it's only preseason, but I thought he read the defenses pretty well. Maybe the processing a tick behind, but I think at some point this season, and probably the majority of the games for the Arizona Cardinals will be started not by Jacoby Brissett, but by Carson Beck. Now, does that mean that I believe Jacoby Brissett is not going to be the opening day quarterback? No, I think he is going to start game one for the Arizona Cardinals, but this is already a new coaching staff, a new regime that is not necessarily married to Jacoby Brissett. And while Jacoby Brissett put up good numbers last year, most of them were with the Arizona Cardinals coming from behind, and he, setting the record for completions. It wasn't as if the offense was at full bore with Jacoby Brissett leading things at quarterback. I think there's a chance if Carson Beck is the quarterback at some point this season, you see that offense taking another step forward. I think he's a guy that can get Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr. the football, especially if he is reading the field as well as he did in this preseason loss to the Carolina Panthers. So I think at some point Carson Beck is going to, leapfrog Gardner Minshew for the QB2 spot to start off the year for Arizona, and then he will eventually, before the middle of the season, usurp the great Jacoby Brissett, who just signed his contract extension or got a pay raise and was holding out up until the very start of training camp. And I think Carson Beck can win you some games at the NFL level, especially if his arm has a little bit more power in it since that UCL tear that he suffered a couple of years ago now. Sometimes when things break down, it gets a little bit testy for him, and I don't think we saw enough of the pocket breaking down because the Arizona Cardinals offensive line was really dominant in the run game and in the pass game all throughout the Hall of Fame game. So it wasn't like there was muddy pockets for Carson Beck to work through, and I think that is another potential one of his weaknesses, is working when things start to break down and making plays when he is the only one keeping it alive. I'm not sure he can be super effective in that, but again, I'm not sure Jacoby Brissett has always been super effective with that either. I think Gardner Minshew has, but Gardner Minshew is not necessarily the layup after layup after layup guy that you need to run the offense and at least a competent level over the course of a game. And I think Carson Beck can be that, even if he lacks some of that playmaking talent. And maybe he's learned some of that playmaking talent. But a good game by Carson Beck. Real quick, some other standouts from Arizona just while watching back the game. Hayden Connor on the offensive line. He was playing left guard for the most part in this one. There were a lot of holes opening up for Bam Knight, for Corey Kiner, and Hayden Connor was the one doing a lot of the work. Zach Carter and Andrew Billings, both on the interior early on in this game. Now, Andrew Billings, I feel like it's a little bit of a cheat code because this is a guy that has been a standout. I mean, maybe not a standout, but a really good veteran player in the NFL for some time. He has obviously taken some steps back with his age, which is why he's playing in this preseason game in the first place. So maybe when you are highlighting his performance, you're taking that with a little bit of a grain of salt because this is an NFL veteran going up against players that are probably not up to his caliber in the first place or are still young and learning the game, and he can be a little bit more savvy with the mental side of things. But Zach Carter, who I think is only entering his fourth season, I really liked some of the penetration that he was getting. There were a couple of that first sack on Kenny Pickett on that first drive. It was credited to Andrew Billings, but it was Zach Carter that pushed the pocket and broke down the pocket almost as soon as that snap was received in the hands of Kenny Pickett. And Andrew Billings was there to finish him off. And then Andrew Billings on a run play close to the end zone, close to the Panthers' end zone, I should say, with the Panthers backed up in the shadow of their own goalpost. Andrew Billings just tosses aside an offensive lineman and is able to come up and make the tackle. So both of those guys had good showings for Arizona as they try to make the final 53-man roster. Then Carolina, I liked Brady Christensen. I thought he had some good blocks. I liked what Jimmy Horn Jr. was able to do, and now with Chris Brazzell being injured throughout the whole entirety of his rookie season in 2026, Panthers are going to be looking for that third option. Is it Xavier Legette, or do you bring in the more shifty underneath sort of guy in Jimmy Horn Jr.? And Jimmy Horn Jr. made his case with some physical catches, holding onto the football, some good twitchy movements, some good yards after catch. He was used mostly as a gadget player in Carolina's offense last year. Let's see if they can get him a little bit more involved. But I think him and Xavier Legette are really going to compete for that number 3 wide receiver spot behind both Ted McMillan and Jalen Coker, whose spots are not in question in any sort of sense. So Jimmy Horn, liked what I saw from him. And then randomly, I had to look this guy up. An Arizona State tight end who didn't really do a whole lot in the passing game, but he sprung a Miles Davis big explosive run. And right before he sprung that run, he had another good run blocking rep where he is able to get to the second level. He's able to help at the first level before climbing up to a second defender and block that defender really well. So a guy that could make the final 53 for the Panthers, Shimon Mateer. If I'm mispronouncing that, I probably am, but all apologies to the Mateer family. But number 41 for the Carolina Panthers got some good reps in as a run blocker. And if we are going into this 3 tight end world for a lot of these teams, and, Jatavian Sanders, it looks like with him playing tonight, his job could be up in the air as a tight end behind Tommy Tremble and behind Mitchell Evans. Well, then I think Shimon Mateer has just as much of a chance as Sanders to be that third tight end on those 13 tight end sets. We haven't seen him as a pass catcher, but if you want that third tight end to be more of your extra run blocker, I think that Shimon Mateer is going to be a better option than like Jatavian Sanders. I can't believe I did not go into this episode thinking that I was going to spend 3 minutes on Shimon Mateer, but hey, he impressed me enough to do just that. But that was the Hall of Fame game, and of course it kicks off your Hall of Fame weekend over in Canton, Ohio, where 5 new players will be inducted into football immortality. A lot of them were speaking on the broadcast with Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth last night, and those 5 players are Drew Brees, as well as Larry Fitzgerald, Luke Kuechly, Adam Vinatieri, and Roger Craig, all very, very deserving. Roger Craig was the first ever versatile running back to get both 1,000 yards on the ground and 1,000 yards through the air. He was a key part of the West Coast system of Bill Walsh and Joe Montana. He made that system really, he epitomized that system as using the pass game as an extension of the run game, and you are seeing both the run game work and the pass game as an extension of the run game work, with him getting both 1,000 yards on the ground and 1,000 yards as a receiver. Didn't put up like mind-boggling numbers throughout the course of his career, but I think he kind of helped change what the modern NFL offense looks like. And I hate the cliche of could you tell the story of the NFL without this player? Because no, you couldn't tell the story of the NFL without any player. Maybe you could, but every single story can be so beautiful within the NFL. Even the roster bubble guy that doesn't end up making the team, but had a long journey just to be in that sort of spot. Even those are stories that are worth listening to about the NFL. But Roger Craig in particular, you could not tell the story of the West Coast offense that became so popular after Joe Montana had so much success with it and Bill Walsh, and you could not tell the story of guys like Christian McCaffrey and Marshall Faulk, who would later go on and do the same feat as Roger Craig and getting 1,000 yards on the ground and 1,000 yards through the air. So well-deserved for him. Obviously, Drew Brees, when he retired, was the record holder in most passing categories, has since been passed by Tom Brady, who stayed on to make sure he could hold on not only to all the Super Bowl records, but also to all of the NFL passing records. But at one time when Drew Brees retired, he was the leader in passing yards. He was the leader in touchdowns, and obviously was such a key part of keeping football in New Orleans. You might remember after Hurricane Katrina during the 2005 season, the Saints played a lot of their games in San Antonio, and there was a push for Tom Benson to move the team permanently to San Antonio and just leaving New Orleans all at once. Sean Payton comes in, the city is able to keep the team, and Drew Brees immediately makes the Saints relevant after a 3-13 season and eventually leads them to the 2009 Super Bowl, where they beat the Indianapolis Colts. That was his Super Bowl win, him and Sean Payton. Sean Payton is going to be introducing him at Canton, so that is going to be something to look forward to this weekend. But he is not only a prolific passer, he is also a person whose narrative features as the person that helped bring New Orleans back from the brink, in a more figurative way than a literal way. Obviously, the workers that helped build the city after the flooding, that went to go rescue people that were trapped on their buildings, on top of their buildings. All of those people helped the city get back in a much more literal sense, but from a thematic sense, it was Drew Brees helping pull New Orleans up from that disaster that was Hurricane Katrina 20 years ago. Adam Vinatieri, also well-deserved. None of these guys are not well-deserved, but Adam Vinatieri, one of probably the best clutch kicker of all time, has kicks to end 2 Super Bowls for Patriots wins. The Patriots dynasty doesn't exist without him, yada, yada, yada. And in order to even get to that first Patriots Super Bowl, it was a 2001 divisional game against the Raiders in Foxborough with the snow coming down, and he kicks a game-tying 40-plus yard field goal in a game whose conditions almost made seeing the field goal posts impossible. That ends up tying the game, and then he goes on to win the game in overtime. Those kicks, to me, are more impressive even than the Super Bowl winning kicks. And then he spends really a whole nother lifetime with the Indianapolis Colts after leaving New England, wins a Super Bowl with them, and becomes one of the top leading scorers in NFL history. Larry Fitzgerald, Mr. Arizona, spent his entire career with the Cardinals. Obviously, the 2008 postseason run was stuff of legend, where he had the 3 touchdowns against the Eagles, the 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl against the Steelers, including one that looked like it was going to be the game-winning touchdown before Ben Roethlisberger and Santonio Holmes hooked up in the back corner of the end zone. But just a guy that has always been known for his acrobatic catching ability, and his ability to come through in clutch situations, and that had to go with quarterbacks like John Skelton and with Kevin Cobb, and still put up 1,000-yard seasons or 900-plus yard seasons despite those guys throwing him the ball. Drew Henson, I think, also. Ryan Lindley, a lot of different quarterbacks that probably shouldn't have been playing at an NFL level were throwing Larry Fitzgerald the football, and he was still able to put up pretty prolific numbers. Very good for him for getting into the Hall of Fame, and obviously he's also a Minnesota boy, so us Vikings fans knew him as the ball boy. I don't know if they knew him at that point as the Vikings ball boy, but he was also a star at Holy Angels while he was the Vikings ball boy, so maybe his name was known and people could recognize him when he was on the sidelines, and of course his dad was also a big-time sports writer in the Twin Cities. Then finally, Luke Kuechly. I thought he should have been a first ballot guy last year because even though his time was short, it was a peak that I think defined the modern linebacker position, much like Patrick Willis did before him. Both of those guys, very similar careers in terms of retiring at the top of their game and being the best at their position and redefining what that middle linebacker position meant in a modern NFL. era. And obviously now Fred Warner has kind of taken that mantle as the top middle linebacker in the game, but that Carolina Panthers defense maybe doesn't go 15-1 in 2015 without Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis, who goes unheralded, I think, at times, manning the middle of that. So those are your 5 Hall of Famers: Roger Craig, Drew Brees, Adam Vinatieri, Larry Fitzgerald, and Luke Kuechly. Obviously, good congratulations to all of those guys. They will be enshrined over the weekend. I'm sure you can go to NFL Network or ESPN to see the ceremonies if you so choose. And I wanted to take a moment real quick to go through some 2027 predictions of who will make the Hall of Fame, and then it'll be fun when the voting is done at the NFL Awards show in February before the Super Bowl to see how many of these we were able to get right. Now, you can get 5 modern candidates into the Hall of Fame. This year they put 4 in, and then I think Roger Craig was like on the Veterans Committee of candidates to be put in. But you can put in 5 modern candidates at most per year. And for 2027, I have 2 first-time Hall of Fame candidates, 2 players that have been on the ballot before, and then 1 coach that has been on the ballot before. I think Adrian Peterson is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He was the best running back in the league during his time that he was on the field. Him and LaDainian Tomlinson have been the best running backs career-wise of the 21st century. I mean, obviously, you're going to start to put Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and maybe Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson into that category soon. But Adrian Peterson, from 2007 until probably 2015, was the number 1 running back, hands down, without a doubt. Had an MVP season with Christian Ponder throwing interceptions left and right, throwing 3-yard passes on 3rd and longs. He helped that team, hindered by Christian Ponder, get into the playoffs, sneak into the playoffs with a 10-6 record by going over 2,000 yards a season after he had just torn his ACL, to win an MVP award and to be the last running back to have won an MVP award. I think all of that is enough to get him into the Hall of Fame on his very first ballot. And I think Rob Gronkowski, who you can make a case for is the best tight end of all time, both as a blocker and as a receiver, is going to also be in on his first time on the ballot. He could have put even more prolific numbers up if it wasn't for injuries that slowed him down even in the prime of his career at times. And the numbers that he put up even with those injuries dwarf some of our favorite tight ends in NFL history, like John Mackey or like Kellen Winslow. Rob Gronkowski, obviously in a more modern pass-heavy league, has really taken the title during his NFL career as the best tight end of all time. And also with that Patriots dynasty, I think Bill Belichick has to get in, a coach that has won more Super Bowls than any other. It was probably a travesty that he didn't get in on his first year of the ballot. And if Robert Kraft somehow gets into the Hall of Fame before Bill Belichick, well, then that will be a war crime, essentially. And we will have to storm the streets of Canton and sing "Do You Hear the People Sing" as we riot and undo what would be a mass injustice. But I also could see them waiting to get Belichick, Kraft, and Brady all in on the same ballot whenever it is Tom Brady becomes eligible for the ballot for the first time. Reggie Wayne, also going to make it. He is, usually there's 1 wide receiver every single year that gets into the Hall of Fame, and if it is a legendary wide receiver like Larry Fitzgerald, that guy kind of skips the line and gets in on the first ballot. Reggie Wayne is in, I don't know what year it is for him, but he's been on the ballot for multiple years now, and I think he is a little bit higher up on the pecking order than Torrey Holt in terms of how his NFL career is seen. So if there's going to be 1 wide receiver, I think it's going to be Reggie Wayne. And then we're going to put 1 defensive player in as well. And it's between Terrell Suggs and Kevin Williams, both coming from the same draft class. But I think Terrell Suggs was the splashier player that lives longer in the memories of Pro Football Hall of Fame writers. So I'm going to go with Terrell Suggs as that number 5 spot. So once again, the 2027 Hall of Fame predictions here by the Grey Duck NFL show. Adrian Peterson, Rob Gronkowski, Bill Belichick, Reggie Wayne, and Terrell Suggs all getting the call when we are talking about next year's Hall of Fame game, whoever that may be against. Well, we've talked about the Hall of Fame game. We've talked about the Hall of Fame. And now let's get into some of the news that is swirling around at all of the different training camps throughout the NFL since our last show when we recorded on Tuesday morning. And the first piece of news is Stefon Diggs has finally found a home, and the Washington Commanders have finally found their wide receiver too. Diggs signs a contract with the Washington Commanders. It will be his fourth team in 4 years. He obviously spent one last year with the Bills back in 2023, 24 to the Texans, 25 to the Patriots, 26 now. He is going to play with Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders and is going to be a perfect complement to the explosive big play receiver that is Terry McLaurin. And a team that has in the past liked to throw a lot of screens, McLaurin and Stefon Diggs are some of the very best yards after catch. And I wanted to look back on the film a little bit to see, has Stefon Diggs lost a step? Is he still the same player? Why hasn't he put up great numbers since leaving Buffalo, and really even in his last season in Buffalo kind of took a step back? He is still the same movement route runner that he was when he was in the prime of his career with Josh Allen. Maybe he's not as much of a vertical threat anymore, but when it comes to his pure hip fluidity, his ability to sell routes, his ability to know and read when it's man coverage and when it's zone, and when he needs to sit down in a soft spot of the zone and when he needs to win on one-on-one battle, he knows when to use certain moves and to use certain head fakes or certain double moves at times in order to get himself open. And I think that is going to be something that Jaden Daniels will be able to rely on a lot as he goes into a third season that comes after an injury-riddled second season where it was clear that he wasn't at his best, wasn't at the heights, even when he was on the field, wasn't at the heights that he was in during his rookie campaign. So Stefon Diggs is going to come and hopefully save the day in Washington, and maybe, hopefully, for all of us, that ends the Brandon Ayuk fever dream that has been going on. I think the Washington Commanders were the only real team that had any sort of interest in Brandon Ayuk, and now the San Francisco 49ers probably just going to keep him, on their non-football roster until his contract expires, and not having to pay him, because if somebody really gets desperate for a wide receiver, you can just send him that way. But I don't think Brandon Ayuk is going to play in the NFL again, with all of the off-season social media antics that have kind of poisoned the minds of us against him a little bit. So Stefon Diggs in, probably Brandon Ayuk, not going to pair up with his former college teammate after all. I wonder if he's still going to be wearing the Washington Commanders gear throughout the course of this season, as he has been, even though he is currently employed by the San Francisco 49ers, has been wearing the Washington Commanders stuff and been very open about wanting to play with the Washington Commanders and wanting to be out of San Francisco. We shall see. Maybe he gets brought back to San Francisco with all of the, they just activate him with all of the injuries that wide receiver core has been going through, with Pearsall out for the year, Mike Evans dealing with a quad strain, Dejon Stribling missing some time, and then Deebo Samuel just being older in his second stint with the San Francisco 49ers. So maybe Brandon Ayuk eventually, somehow, in a roundabout way, just ends up back in the starting lineup for the San Francisco 49ers, and everybody just has to kind of hold their nose up at it, both on the Brandon Ayuk side of things and also on the San Francisco 49ers side of things. I doubt that happens. I think a catastrophic sort of event would have to take place that maims or injures most of the 49ers roster, and we don't want that to happen, although with the substation, that is obviously very, very possible, and all of the mystical powers that it possesses to apparently take down the San Francisco 49ers players one by one. But barring that catastrophe, a mass catastrophe, Brandon Ayuk will be the very last option on the list of guys that San Francisco brings in to ever play for them at wide receiver. Another guy that this could be bad for, not only Brandon Ayuk, but for the folks that have already drafted their fantasy football teams and were buying big on Antonio Williams as the number 2 wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. Obviously, he's going to be bumped back. He didn't even have that job won in the first place, and now he's going to be bumped back to at least the number 3 behind both Diggs and Terry McLaurin. And I know a lot of people liked Antonio Williams coming out of Clemson, I wasn't as sold on him as a lot of folks, but I could see his fit in the Commanders' offense. But it is a similar fit that Stefon Diggs could play in some of the more underneath and intermediate routes. And Stefon Diggs, being the better route runner, being the guy with more veteran savvy, that still hasn't lost a step really, is obviously going to fill out that role better than Antonio Williams did. So hopefully you didn't draft Antonio Williams. Maybe he still ends up making some big plays all season long, but I don't think so now with Stefon Diggs joining the fray in Washington. Another guy that could be joining the fray for an old team soon is one guy named Aaron Donald. Yes, the best defensive player of the 21st century had a tryout, I guess officially, with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I'm not sure if it was, I don't think it was actually a tryout. It was a workout that he did at the Rams facility with Rams pads on and a Rams helmet on. So they had to legally, or according to league rules, had to put on that Aaron Donald tried out, quote unquote, for the team. That doesn't yet mean that he is going to decide to play for the Los Angeles Rams, but we are looking more and more by the day that is going to be his ultimate decision, is to come back to this Los Angeles Rams defense that is already filled with all-star players at every single level. He's going to join Myles Garrett, and those two players, Myles Garrett, who is now the best defensive player currently, and he's going to team up with the best defensive player of the 21st century, and that is going to wreck a lot of games for opposing offenses that go up against the Los Angeles Rams, even if Aaron Donald is only half the player that he was after he left the NFL post-2023 season. Let's just look at what this defensive line could be. Braden Fisk, Poona Ford, and Kobe Turner are the three guys right now in a 3-4 set, according to Our Lads, that would get the starts in the Rams depth chart. Braden Fisk, excellent player. Poona Ford, excellent player. Kobe Turner, breakout, excellent player. Now you slide Aaron Donald in on there, and you're rotating one of those guys in and off, and you get fresh legs all the time. And pair that with the edge rushers of Myles Garrett, of course, Josiah Stewart even, and Byron Young, and you've got yourself a front seven, or in a bare front, your front five with the 3 down linemen and the 2 off the edge, that is going to give offenses fits all season long. And even when the guys get tired, you're bringing in a level of player that is not much that far below the caliber of the starter who is ahead of him on the depth chart. If Poona Ford has to be the bench player so that Aaron Donald can take the nose tackle spot, or if Braden Fisk so that Aaron Donald can take the 3 technique spot, those guys coming off the bench are going to provide a spark whenever it is Aaron Donald, Poona Ford, or Kobe Turner need to take a little bit of time to rest their legs. So it is scary what is happening to the Los Angeles Rams. They are acquiring every single defensive player. And if you might remember on our last show, we talked about the Vita Vea trade rumors from Tampa Bay. He wants to, and the update there is that his agent has said the only way he sees the saga ending is with a trade of Vita Vea from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it looks like things are going the wrong way if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan wanting to keep Vea. But if you're a fan of a California team in particular, because I think Vita Vea has made it explicitly known that he wants to play for a California squad. So San Francisco, the Rams, the Chargers, all of those are options. And I posed at the last show that the Rams still have draft capital because they gave up Jared Verse instead of a second first-round pick in the Myles Garrett trade. So they still have 2028 capital. They still have 2029 draft capital if they really want to go out and give away a first-round pick and bring in Vita Vea. I don't know if Vita Vea would cost a first-round pick. I would give up a first-round pick for Vita Vea, but I've heard on other shows and other people around the league think that would be a bit of a steep price, so you might even get to keep a 2028 first-round draft pick if you're the Los Angeles Rams. And while the Rams do have a lot of free agents going into next year, they also have a lot of cap space to work with for the 2027 season. You could structure a Vita Vea contract extension that limits the salary cap hit in 2026 and expands it more out in 2027 and beyond. But could you imagine if Aaron Donald comes back and if the Rams were able to do what the Grey Duck has prognosticated and brought Vita Vea over from Tampa Bay, that defense might be the best of all time. We talked, there's one team, I forgot who it was, but they said that they were going to break the 1984 Bears sack record. No, that team wouldn't break the 1984 Bears sack record, but this team with Vita Vea, Aaron Donald, Josiah Stewart, Byron Young, Myles Garrett, Poona Ford, Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, all on the defensive line would assuredly break the sack record and give opposing offenses fits all game long. I don't think we'd see anything like it. I don't think we've ever seen anything like it in the NFL, and right now a lot of this is fantasy because two of the players that we are prognosticating into that defensive line are not on the Los Angeles Rams. One of them is retired. One of them is under contract with another team that thinks they're going to be able to get a contract extension worked out. But if we can just fantasize for a moment, something that I think is a little bit closer to reality than we would all like to admit, an Aaron Donald, Vita Vea addition to this Rams defensive unit, you might as well give the Rams the Super Bowl trophy, and we can just skip all of the fanfare of the 2026 season, if that is to come to be. Moving on from the defensive side of the football over onto the offensive side, where running backs are getting raises all over the NFL. At first, it was Bijan Robinson, who had a record-setting deal for a running back, 3 years, $66.75 million with $51 million guaranteed. It's a deal with incentives that will be up to $75 million over the course of its life. That is, or I should say, was the highest paid running back contract of all time. It was surpassed a day and a half later when Jahmyr Gibbs signed his deal for 3 years and $67.5 million, so just $750,000 more than Bijan Robinson, but still more. $51.5 guaranteed, again, $500,000 more guaranteed than Bijan, but more. And up to $75.5 million. So it is very obvious that Jahmyr Gibbs and his agent were just waiting for Bijan Robinson to sign his contract so that they could swoop in and say, okay, give us $500,000 more. It is some savvy business-making decision by Jahmyr Gibbs and his agent in order to now, those guys are, and have been for multiple days, Jahmyr Gibbs is officially the highest paid running back in NFL history. Another guy that got a contract not quite up to the same level as Bijan's and Gibbs is Jonathan Taylor. He is really the focal point of the Colts offense that makes it go. When Daniel Jones was performing at his best, it just so happened that Jonathan Taylor was also performing at his best. And that's really been the case for the Colts offense since Jonathan Taylor entered the league in 2020. If Jonathan Taylor has been good, the Colts have been good, and he has kind of been the barometer for what Indianapolis can do as an offense. So keeping him around, it was important, especially when you go back and look at the 2023 season, the preseason, as he was holding out. It got a little bit contentious. No such contention this time. 2-year, $44 million deal, $39 million of that guaranteed. So Jonathan Taylor making $22+ million per year in average annual value. But even with these record-breaking running back contracts, is the running back position still underpaid and still undervalued? Because if we want to put it into context, Alec Pierce just signed a deal this offseason for 4 years, $114 million with $84 million guaranteed. And you can debate where you put Alec Pierce on the list of top 50 wide receivers in the NFL, but he's probably on the end of the list that's closer to 50 than it is to number 1. Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, whatever order you personally prefer, are 1A and 1B in the current National Football League at the running back position. And Alec Pierce has guaranteed money in his contract that is worth more than the entirety of Bijan or Gibbs's contract, as even with the incentives caked in there. So running backs, yes, are still, I don't know if underpaid is the right term, but if we are, I get the EPA argument, but I think you help increase your quarterback's EPA and your passing EPA when you get yourself into second and medium situations and third and short situations by being effective running the ball. And when you can get explosives on the ground, with the play action pass becoming in vogue once again in the NFL, being able to establish the run with good running backs is key. And being able, I know most folks will go, or most teams will go with a running back committee, but to be able to have one workhorse back opens up roster flexibility elsewhere on your 53-man sheet. So I think, yes, that we should be having the running backs having their contracts not obviously match those of a wide receiver, but pretty soon I think we need to start bumping them up to like $30 million per year guys, at least the premier ones, like Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs and maybe Jeremiah Love, who, by the way, if we're talking about just pure guaranteed money, Jeremiah Love, with his $53 million, has the most guaranteed money for a running back contract of all time. So he already has one contract record. Maybe Jeremiah Love is going to be the first $30 million running back. I think someone eventually deserves it. We will see if that ever is the case, if the running back contracts ever catch up to what I would say the true running back value is, which goes beyond the rushing EPA per play. That is a good stat, that is a good guideline to look at, but isn't a stat that tells the whole story for the ground game. Other extensions that happened in the NFL over the course of the last week or so. Zay Flowers gets a big deal, 4 years, $140 million, 108 of that guaranteed. By the way, that's more than Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs as well. Zay Flowers has been the number one wide receiver for the Ravens offense, had his best season of his career last year where he opened himself up as more than just a gadget player that's going to get a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage and be counted on to get yards after catch from there. He is a Z receiver. He's not always, he can play in the slot. I think a lot of people think of him as purely a slot receiver, but he plays everywhere and provides good outlet options for Lamar Jackson and good play design options for Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't call him a number one wide receiver. I would call him one of the top 32 in the NFL. I would put him ahead probably of Alec Pierce as of right now for the 2026 season. And in fact, I think I did on the Grey Duck Top 250 earlier in the week. Or I guess the wide receiver show would have been a couple weeks ago. But I believe Zay Flowers was on that top 32 and Alec Pierce, if he was at number 32. But Zay Flowers getting paid the same contract essentially as Justin Jefferson is going to continue to inflate the wide receiver market. Pretty soon, Justin Jefferson's going to be asking for a new contract extension. Jordan Addison, who was taken a pick after Zay Flowers in the 2023 NFL draft, is also going to be looking for a contract extension that is more or equals Zay Flowers. Maybe does something like Jahmyr Gibbs did to Bijan Robinson's deal and just tack on $500,000 because those guys are about the same caliber of player overall. Meaning, this wide receiver market, if the number two wide receivers are getting 30 plus million, are getting what was a record setting deal for a wide receiver when Justin Jefferson signed his 4-year, $140 million contract just 2 years ago. Well, then we're going to see maybe in 2 years from now, they're at the JSN levels. A guy like, say, who would be like Emeka Egbuka could be a $52 million player if he plays at the same level as Zay Flowers. And if he plays at the same level as Jackson Smith and Jigba, those guys kind of comp to one another, well, then he gets the new record-setting deal. But I think teams are going to have to start opening up their pocketbook. We are in an arms race. We are in a time of big inflation. Maybe we have a wide receiver bubble that will eventually pop one day. But as of right now, those wide receiver prices seem like they are not slowing down at all, although so did the housing market prior to the 2007-2008 housing market crash. So two different, obviously, realms there, but maybe eventually the wide receiver contracts start to get calmed a little bit. I don't see that happening anytime soon with the rate of which the cap in the NFL is going up, especially post-2030 when a new TV deal is going to be put into place. Darnell Wright is going to up his money for the next 4 years. The Bears right tackle signs a 4-year, $116 million deal with $93 million guaranteed, so less than Zay Flowers. But Darnell Wright has quietly been one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. In a couple of weeks, we'll have the top offensive tackles in football, the top 32, and I'm sure Darnell Wright will be in the top 10, or at least very, very close to the top 10 when we finally release that list. He is just a slab of concrete that doesn't get moved, and has refined his technique. He was always a behemoth, and now his technique has been a lot more refined as he has grown in his NFL career and experience and become a veteran. And not only is he a behemoth, he's a behemoth with good hands and good feet that can stop basically any edge rusher coming over from the right side. He is the anchor of that Bears offensive line, him and Joe Thuney, both some of the best at their position in the NFL, and he gets well rewarded with the 4-year, $116 million deal with, again, $93 million guaranteed. O'Cyrus Torrence is also getting an extension. He is the lone Bills starting guard from last year's Bills offensive line. You might remember David Edwards signed a free agent deal with the New Orleans Saints during this offseason. O'Cyrus Torrence is the one that is sticking around in Buffalo, and he's going to stick around for an even longer time, and will get to play right next to Connor McGovern for quite some time, because he signed a 4-year deal worth $78.4 million. $46 million of that is guaranteed, and again, that is more total money than Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs' contract gives them, and we had O'Cyrus Torrence ranked in our top 32 in the Grey Duck Top 250, our top 32 of offensive guards in the NFL, but he was close to the bottom tier of that top 32, which puts him as a capable starting guard, but not a high-end starting guard at the NFL level, and that is still more than what running backs currently make. So if we are going to continue to make the position-to-position value comparison, again, being a running back as of right now is a poor career choice, because you get battered, because you get almost abused by your offensive coordinator if you're good. See DeMarco Murray, see Larry Johnson, giving them a lot of touches and putting their shelf life, drastically decreasing it, their shelf life. And meanwhile, guys like O'Cyrus Torrence, who is good, serviceable, not elite, getting the same amount of money, if not a little bit more, in this case for O'Cyrus Torrence, although the average annual value realm would go, that competition would go to Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs if we were to go that far into it. And then finally, lesser contract here, but a guy that's going to play a role on the Houston Texans defense. Henry To'oTo'o signs a 2-year, $16 million extension with Houston. Azeez Al-Shaair is the big linebacker in the middle there, and they use a lot of nickel and sometimes even dime sets, but when Henry To'oTo'o is on the field and has his number called, he's a valuable part of that Houston Texans defense. Not quite to the Azeez Al-Shaair level, but can get it done for a Houston Texans defense that really has no weakness at any level of its defense. Defensive line, linebackers, secondary, everybody seems to perform to the peak of their powers in Houston with DeMeco Ryans, but Henry To'oTo'o rewarded with a 2-year, $16 million contract. And those are your extensions over the last week here on the Grey Duck NFL show. That is the good news. Let's head on over to some of the bad news, and that is some injury updates that we've seen over the course of training camp this week. And the one that is the biggest bummer of them all right now is Jalen Walker, the edge rusher, coming into his second year for the Atlanta Falcons, is going to be out for this season after suffering a torn ACL. So no more Jalen Walker. That is certainly a shame for a guy that was going to look to take the next step. He had a decent rookie season. I think James Pierce kind of outplayed him as an edge rusher, but James Pierce has his own now off-the-field stuff to work with, so you might not have either of those two first-round edge rushers on the field for you for significant parts of this 2026 season if James Pierce ends up facing any sort of suspension. But Jalen Walker still was serviceable last year, 6.5 sacks, and he had basically two really good moves as an edge rusher, and I think this year was going to be a significant growth time of growth for him to take his game to the next level during training camp and then showcase it during the regular season. Because when he was consistently getting to the quarterback, early on in the season, it was on designed blitzes, essentially. He's always going to be rushing the passer, but it was designed to open up gaps to his side of the field. His get off, tick slow. His speed to power, non-existent, and it's never really improved in that realm throughout most of the season. Sometimes he can get around the edge, but he wins when he is able to get his hands into a defender and is able to long arm them. That is when you put your inside arm on the chest of the offensive tackle so that they can't get their hands on you, and now you are controlling that block, and you are able to just kind of stiff arm them on your way to the quarterback. And that was when Jalen Walker was at his best. Towards the end of the season, he started using a counter off of that long arm move, which is a dip where you start out with a long arm to get the offensive lineman lunging towards you to try so that they can try and get their hands on you first before you can get your hands on them. And then instead of going with the long arm, you just dip your shoulders underneath. You get underneath that offensive lineman who now is off balance and falls forward, and you get a free run at the quarterback from there. So Jalen Walker had that very, very good pass rusher move with the long arm and then the dip off of that. I would have wanted to see him add more to his arsenal in the second year, and now he won't get the opportunity to do that. So hopefully he is able to heal up and be ready to showcase the next level of his game when we hit the 2027 season. But as for right now, he's going to be out for the year, and that is hurting a Atlanta Falcons defense that, again, could be without its two best edge rushers from a year ago, that is with Caden Ellis going over to New Orleans, is without its best blitzing linebacker from a year ago, that is now without David Onyemata. So a lot of new parts in Atlanta going to have to weld together quickly in order for the Falcons defense to look anything like it did during the 2026 or 2025 season, I should say. But again, it is a significant blow to that Falcons defense, and I was already not super bullish on the Atlanta Falcons team, and this makes me even less so. And then finally, another injury. Kenyon Sadiq of the New York Jets, the rookie tight end, has taken a couple more weeks off with his recovering from a core surgery. The Jets were expecting him back sometime this week or next week, but he's going to be out for a few more weeks, which could keep him out until the start of the regular season. And at that point, you're going to be catching up on the playbook. So Mason Taylor becomes the beneficiary of this, but the New York Jets might not be able to see what they have of one of their top 3 first-round picks during the 2026 training camp, as Sadiq is still recovering from that core muscle surgery. He's an athletic playmaker, but we're going to talk Grade Duck 250 in just a second for the tight ends. But because of this, I actually moved him down because I'm not exactly sure, not necessarily because I think this is going to be a lingering injury, although it could, but mostly because it's going to take him longer now to be integrated into the offense, to both get onto the same page as his quarterback, as Geno Smith, while also learning the playbook, while also executing the playbook at a game-ready level. So I pushed Sadiq down a couple of spots on our top 32 tight ends during the Grey Duck NFL 250 series because I think that injury is going to really shorten what he can do, shorten the window that he will be a elite playmaker during this season. And I think that window will eventually open, but I think it will be now later in this season, like once we hit December, once he's fully integrated with that offense, and if that injury does not, in fact, linger. Speaking of the Grey Duck Top 250, let's get right back over into it as we hit the final segment of today's show. And again, if you're unfamiliar, the Grey Duck Top 250 is a series that we are doing here on the Grey Duck NFL show, to try and count down the top 250 players in all of the NFL. And by doing that, every single show, we are unveiling a top 32 at a new position. We've done wide receivers, we've done linebackers, we've done centers, we've done guards, and today we're going to do the top 32 tight ends. And then the hope is, once we've gone position by position by position, we put all of those together, and I rank the top 250 players in the NFL based on these positional lists and how much I value an elite quarterback versus an elite edge rusher, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's get into our top 32 tight ends. And again, I want to reiterate that this is not a who has been the best tight end during their NFL career up to this point is who I project is going to have the best 2026 season, based partially, yes, on track record, but also on the system that they are in. Also, my projections of them, which can go back to what I thought of them when they were drafted, whether it was 2026 or 2025 or even 2024, and how I think they're going to take the next steps forward. It is a ranking, it is a pecking order that I personally think subjectively will be the list of the top 32 tight ends that we can mostly agree upon once the season is over in January. So let's get started with number 32, and this is the lone New York Giant on the list. It is Isaiah Likely. He's going to get the starting job with the New York Giants. Him and Theo Johnson will both see a lot of time on the field together. I think if there was a 33 or 34, Theo Johnson would be right around there, not much further down than Isaiah Likely. I don't love Isaiah Likely as a blocker. He can be capable, not always, but I do like Isaiah Likely's athleticism that he brings to the position. I think he's a guy that, quote unquote, changes the math because he has the speed to really hurt you if you go with a heavy personnel against a 2 tight end set or a 1 tight end set. He has the speed to burn and size to burn linebackers and safety when he goes up against them in coverage, so he can create mismatches. But we've been saying that about Isaiah Likely for quite some time, and even when Mark Andrews has been out with the Baltimore Ravens, Isaiah Likely never really took that next step forward to be that premier tight end on a consistent basis. He had games where he looked really good, like that season opener against the Chiefs in 2024, but by and large has been up and down in those moments when he has been the top tight end on the Ravens depth chart. Now he goes over to the New York Giants. He's going to obviously share some snaps with Theo Johnson, and I am going to put him at number 32. Meanwhile, number 31 is actually the third tight end on his team, and that is David Njoku. I'm excited to see what the Los Angeles Chargers do with their offense that includes 3 really good tight ends that were all in the top 32. That also includes Alec Ingold, the fullback. You could see a lot. We talked about 13 personnel sets over the last couple of years. You could see a lot more, I think, not to an exorbitant amount, but I think you're going to see, relative to what how the 23 personnel packages have been used in the NFL recently and in just modern NFL history, which is like less than a 2% rate. I think relative to that, you're going to see the Chargers run a little more 23 personnel. Now, that might just be a bump up from 2% to 7%, but I think they're going to make a package of 23 personnel, not just running plays, but also play action passes off of that with those 3 tight ends. And David Njoku is a guy that can block, is an athletic receiver that can go up and get the ball, and is the perfect person to be that third tight end in the 3 tight end set. And his teammate, Charlie Kolar, comes in at number 30. Yes, I have Charlie Kolar, the former Baltimore Raven, ahead of his former teammate Isaiah Likely, ahead of his current teammate David Njoku. Charlie Kolar is one of the best blockers for a tight end position in the NFL. That brings a lot of value, but even coming into the draft, when he was first drafted, he was known for his ability to catch the ball. So he hasn't necessarily always had the opportunity to showcase that. Now, being the number 2 tight end, maybe you can even argue he ends up being the number 1 tight end because he is more of a all-around tight end than Oronde Gadsden is. Maybe we see Charlie Kolar taking steps forward in the results of his receiving game. So not only does he become a good run blocker, but also becomes a good pass catcher that can be reliable for Justin Herbert, again, in that 23 personnel that I think they're going to use a little bit more this season. Then number 29, it is Darnell Washington, a guy that has been at times kind of compared to an actual he's kind of a pseudo tight end that is actually an offensive tackle that run blocks exceptionally well. He was the key, I think, to what Pittsburgh wanted to do on offense last season, which was bring a lot of guys onto the line of scrimmage and just run the football or give a quick window to Aaron Rodgers. And if they want to do that again this year, they have the players to do that, and Darnell Washington is one of those. A little bit underrated as a pass catcher, but obviously his biggest ability is his ability to take up space and block folks off of the line of scrimmage. Then number 28, it is Jackson Hawes of the Buffalo Bills. I was in love with Jackson Hawes since I saw him coming out of Georgia Tech in the 2025 NFL Draft. I thought the Buffalo Bills got an absolute steal by getting him late in the draft on day 3. And he has really shown himself to be a very competent NFL tight end. He is an excellent run blocker. He isn't a flashy receiver, but he is a capable receiver if he needs to go out and catch passes. He had a couple of touchdowns this past year. He put up better numbers than guys that were drafted ahead of him, like Terrence Ferguson, like Mason Taylor, and he was able to put together a better run blocking profile than both Taylor and Terrence Ferguson last year. So I really like Jackson Hawes. I don't necessarily think he's going to be used any more in the receiving game than he was this past year, but if you're trying to get James Cook and Josh Allen some running lanes, getting Jackson Hawes onto the field is one surefire way to do just that. Number 27 is a rookie who I really, really like, and I think is going to be the number 2 tight end on his team once we hit the regular season, and that is Oscar Delp of the New Orleans Saints. Oscar Delp at Georgia, I think, was criminally underutilized over the last couple of seasons. Whenever you see him go out into space to try and make a catch, he is fluid. His hips move well. He moves fast. He looks like he is a competent route runner. And whenever but he just never got the football because Gunnar Stockton, to put it nicely, didn't read the field all that well most of the time as the quarterback for Georgia. So Oscar Delp was open a lot, but wasn't going to get the targets. He also was a very good run blocker, and I think as camp continues here for New Orleans, they're going to see that, and they're going to give Oscar Delp their second tight end job next to Juwan Johnson, and we're going to see a nice Oscar Delp rookie season that I don't think a lot of folks are expecting. Number 26 is a tight end 2 on another team. This is Michael Mayer of the Las Vegas Raiders. You might forget, before Brock Bowers was taken with the first round pick by Las Vegas in 2024, 2023 they brought, or 2022 maybe it was, Michael Mayer gets brought in, and he was brought in with a second round pick, although some folks had him as a first rounder in that draft. He ends up again going in the second round, but when Brock Bowers has been out, he has been a good option for his quarterbacks to look for when those quarterbacks are able to stay upright for long enough. So I wanted to do a nod to that and put Michael Mayer as the number 26 tight end for 2026. Number 25, Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans. Just a very reliable tight end, nothing flashy, solid. Doesn't have to be the first option, won't be your first option in that Houston Texans offense, but can get the job done. Number 24 is Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers, kind of that same vein as Dalton Schultz, a little bit better of a run blocker. Him and Darnell Washington are a formidable run blocking duo on that Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. Freiermuth has a bit more play as a receiver, and has made some big plays in the past at the receiver position, but again, is not going to be anything flashy in that receiving game. Oronde Gadsden comes in at number 23. This is a player he's the third already Los Angeles Charger to be on our team for the top 32 tight ends going into the 2026 season. He is more of a pure pass catcher. He is not the all-around player that Charlie Kolar is, but when he is making plays in the receiving game, he is making splashy plays, and he is making a name for himself. I think the blocking ability for me, or the lack of it, has moved him down the list, whereas some players that you'll see higher up on the list have both good blocking and good receiving ability. Right now, Gadsden has not yet evolved his game to that point, but he is already a very good receiver for Justin Herbert going into 2026, his sophomore season. Number 22, TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings. I think Hawkinson has taken a fairly significant step back since injuring his ACL at the end of the 2023 season. He missed most of 2024 before coming back in the second half of the year. Still wasn't the same guy in 2025. I think he is on the downward slope of his career, and his run blocking is solid. His receiving is solid, but again, nothing flashy anymore from the Vikings tight end TJ Hawkinson. Cole Kmet comes in at number 21. Same sort of vein again as Hawkinson, as Dalton Schultz, as Pat Freiermuth. Very good run blocker, very capable receiver, but not one of those top-tier receiving tight ends in the NFL. And obviously, he's now the second banana behind a tight end that we will get to much, much later on in this list. Number 20 is Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. He is a great underneath option for Dak Prescott. He is an outlet opportunity for the Dallas offense. I don't know if he is much more than that as a receiver, but when a play breaks down or you need a short pickup, Jake Ferguson seems to be the guy that Dak Prescott and that Brian Schottenheimer like to go to in those situations is Jake Ferguson. So he is a reliable guy. Again, not the flashiest. Hunter Henry is a big-time touchdown red zone threat, and he comes in at number 19. He plays for the New England Patriots, had some big games this season with Drake May throwing him the football. Still, I think this is a fair place to put Hunter Henry, who has never, again, been at the top tier of the receiving tight ends, but is now a tier above of the guys that we have been talking about in Cole Kmet and Pat Freiermuth and Dalton Schultz and TJ Hawkinson. Number 18 is Juwan Johnson of the New Orleans Saints. Again, does two things well. He might even be usurped, if my wildest dreams come true, I guess, be usurped by Oscar Delp as the number one tight end in that New Orleans Saints offense. But Juwan Johnson, whether he is a number one or number two tight end, is a good option for Tyler Shough, his former Oregon teammate, to throw to time and time again. Number 17 is Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. I think this is fair for Mark Andrews, who hasn't been the same Mark Andrews that he had been in the past during the 2024 and 2025 season, whether that be because of injury at times or just a lack of opportunity to play make. I still think he is a very good wide receiving tight end, and obviously is a road grader as well, helping clear lanes for Derrick Henry and for Lamar Jackson whenever it is he decides to go on the run. Number 16 is Harold Fannin Jr., the second-year tight end that is going to get the lion's share of tight end snaps now that David Njoku is off the team. Fannin, even with Njoku ahead of him on the depth chart last year, put up really good numbers. He's mostly utilized behind the line of scrimmage. I want to see if he can take his game to a level past that, but he is essentially a Jake Ferguson player, just with more athleticism at this point in his career for the Cleveland Browns. Number 15, we are going to go with Seattle's A.J. Barner. He makes that offense really, really work. You hear a lot of the times those tight ends that can make your run game work and then do enough in the play action game. Those guys, a lot of the times, are going to be the key to some of these offenses, and he was a big key for the Seattle Seahawks offense that ran a lot of 12 personnel last year. A.J. Barner, competent blocker to go along with Elijah Arroyo. Both of those guys used in tandem a lot to open up holes for Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet at the time. This year for Jadarian Price and Zach Charbonnet whenever Charbonnet gets back from his injury. And then also be an effective guy in the flat or at the second level to hit in a play action. So A.J. Barner, big-bodied, good blocker, decent receiver. Number 14, I'm going Kenyon Sadiq of the New York Jets. I think I had him at number 11, so he drops about 3 spots because I am uncertain about what his rookie season will hold because of this injury and the amount of time that he will need to catch up to the offense once he returns from said injury. But make no mistake, I do think that moving forward in his career post-2026 season, assuming health, that Kenyon Sadiq ends up much higher on the list in future years. An athletic freak who can block, is serviceable in that aspect, is competent at the very least, and can get the job done and will get the job done as an explosive receiver for Geno Smith and or the rookie quarterback that the Jets select in 2027, which could be, by the way, his Oregon teammate, Dante Moore, if Dante Moore makes it to the Jets when he comes out in the 2027 NFL draft, depending on where the Jets draft and all of that. Number 13, Travis Kelce, old, reliable, even when he is at the floor of his career, which he is right now. Obviously, on the downslope, he is still a top 13 tight end in the NFL. Not going to make many guys miss anymore, but when it comes to finding holes in zone coverage, based on the play call that Andy Reid brings in, Travis Kelce seems to know, based on both that play call and what the defense is lined up in, exactly where the spot to sit down is going to be in his choice routes for Patrick Mahomes. Old, reliable right there. Travis Kelce comes in at number 13. Number 12 is Brenton Strange of the Jacksonville Jaguars, a guy that I really like a lot. And really, the Jaguars' offense was at its best when he was on the field. He missed a little bit of a chunk during the middle of this season, and that was when the Jaguars had their lull offensively and weren't as good, and it looked like, okay, maybe this isn't a playoff team, but Brenton Strange comes back, and the offense picks right back up again. I think that is a key factor in my decision to put him number 12. Number 11 is Cade Otton, another I think, a better version of A.J. Barner, who can block well and receive well. And at times when guys like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans have been injured, and Cade Otton has needed to be the number 1 or number 2 option for Baker Mayfield, he has stepped into that role and provided it admirably well at a consistent basis, unlike what we talked about with number 32, Isaiah Likely, who has times of being really, really good when he is needed to step up into that role because of injury, but more often than not is not very consistent. Then number 10, as we enter the top 10, Kyle Pitts. He'll give you not much as a blocker, but he will give you a lot as an athletic receiving option. Obviously had a really good end to the last season, so excited to see what Kyle Pitts can do as a tight end with a contract extension, cash in hand now for Atlanta in the future. Obviously, his rookie season, he had the 1,000 yards, didn't quite live up to his first-round pedigree for the years following that rookie campaign, up until maybe last year when he took a significant step forward as a big-time receiving option and probably the number 2 receiving option behind Drake London on this Atlanta Falcons offense. Number 9 is Dallas Goedert. Another player that is always going to be reliable for the Philadelphia Eagles. Big-bodied, big receiver, ability to block. You got to love it with Dallas Goedert. Dalton Kincaid in that same vein. Maybe just because of his age, I assume a little bit better athleticism, so I put him just a hair above what Dallas Goedert is at. Number 7 is second-year tight end Tyler Warren of the Indianapolis Colts. He is a tight end you can use as an H-back, as a fullback, as a center, as Penn State did. He can be used in a variety of different ways, give your offense versatile, different looks, and he is an average run blocker and a really good receiver when it comes to catching the ball and then finding space after the catch. Number 6 is Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. Again, this was another player, much like when Brenton Strange was out, the Jaguars offense suffered to an even bigger extent. The Packers offense suffered when Tucker Kraft was not on the field after his week 8 or week 9 torn ACL that kept him out for the rest of the season. He is healthy and ready to go, already practicing at training camp, so he shouldn't miss any time once the season gets underway, and he is, I think, going to be the primary target on a lot of throws from Jordan Love. Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions comes in at number 5. Statistically took a little bit of a step back last season, so he might lose some ground if that trend continues when we do the top 250 at the end of the year and going into the 2027 season, but I don't want to write him off just yet. George Kittle is number 4, and believe me, if it wasn't for this injury, I would always have George Kittle at number 1 because he is the best receiving tight end, the best blocking tight end. He does both of those things with at an elite level, and probably still will this season, but the coming off of the injury, I think it was an Achilles, coming off of that injury gives me a little bit more pause to if he can still reach that same level, so I kind of cut the difference, split the difference, and put George Kittle at number 4. Number 3 is Brock Bowers of the Las Vegas Raiders, a great pure receiving threat that can block. Again, not very great at it, but can get an angle on a guy if you need him to. But he's known for his ability to get open in the intermediate area of the field, be a solid power slot possession sort of receiver in the Raiders offense. Whether it's Fernando Mendoza or Kirk Cousins throwing it to him, he's going to be the security blanket for both of those guys, or either of those guys. Number 2, I think Colston Loveland is going to have a breakout season, even more so than the breakout second half he showed once he started getting the major share of tight end snaps in the Bears offense. I think Colston Loveland is going to take another step forward as an elite receiver, and he is a better blocker than Brock Bowers. I think their receiving game is about on par with one another, and I like Loveland a little bit better as a blocker, so I put Loveland ahead of Bowers at number 2, and number 1 is Trey McBride of the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Arizona Cardinals. Trey McBride, the elite of the elite tight ends. He is a good run blocker. He is an elite pass catcher. He is the new George Kittle whenever George Kittle decides to hang up his cleats, because he can do everything well for that Arizona Cardinals offense and is one of the rare parts that can make everything go well for that Cardinals offense. Although, hey, we saw Carson Beck. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. Maybe Carson Beck is able to get that offense going and make Trey McBride have another sort of historic season like he was able to have last year. Let's just go through that top 32 one more time. Here it is, the definitive list of your best tight ends in the National Football League, starting from 1 to 32. It goes Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals at number 1, Colston Loveland number 2 from the Chicago Bears. Number 3 is Brock Bowers of the Las Vegas Raiders. George Kittle is number 4 of the San Francisco 49ers. Number 5 is Sam Laporta, he of the Detroit Lions. Number 6 is Tucker Kraft, coming over from the Green Bay Packers. Indianapolis Colts tight end Tyler Warren is number 7. Dalton Kincaid of the Bills is number 8. Number 9 is Dallas Goedert. Number 10 is Kyle Pitts. 11 is Cade Otton of the Buccaneers. Jacksonville's Brenton Strange is number 12. Number 13 is Travis Kelce. Number 14 is Jets rookie tight end Kenyon Sadiq. 15 is Seattle superstar A.J. Barner. 16 is second-year Cleveland Brown Harold Fannin Jr. Mark Andrews comes in at number 17. Jawan Johnson of the New Orleans Saints. Number 18, Drake Mays, security blanket. Hunter Henry is number 19. Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys, number 20. Cole Kmet, the number 2 tight end for the Bears, is number 21 on this list. TJ Hawkinson, the starter for the Vikings, is number 22. Los Angeles' Oronde Gadsden, the Chargers' Oronde Gadsden, is number 23. Pat Freiermuth of the Steelers is number 24. Dalton Schultz of the Texans is number 25. Number 26 is Raiders tight end Michael Mayer. Oscar Delp of the Saints, the rookie, is number 27. Number 28 is Jackson Hawes of the Buffalo Bills. Darnell Washington of the Pittsburgh Steelers is number 29. Number 30 is Charlie Kohler of the Los Angeles Chargers. His teammate David Njoku is number 31. And then number 32, the final spot of our top 32 tight ends as part of the Grey Duck Top 250, is Isaiah Likely of the New York Giants. And that will do it for today's edition of the Top 250. We will have next show on during our next show, the Top 250, the position that will be featured will be the safety position. We'll count them down from 1 to 32 as we work towards a list of the top 250 players in all of the NFL heading in to the 2026 season. And that is going to be it for this episode of the Grey Duck NFL Show. Thanks for listening. If you got something out of it, subscribe, give us a rating, or share. It goes a long way. We'll be back next week with more NFL talk. It's straight takes, no fluff. That's the Grey Duck way. Enjoy training camp, and we will catch you back here on Tuesday.